I was thinking the other day, I was telling my wife when I got home from the cafe how nice it is from time to time to bump into a bloke that you just feel like you're a little aligned with, whether it's in vision or with ethos or whatever it is. But I saw you
Yeah.
about a week ago sitting at the Ocean Grove Cafe. It's a new one to me, so I can't remember its name.
Rocket Man.
Rocket Man. Oh yeah, I walked into Rocket Man, and the first week I saw you sitting there, I thought, gee, this bloke looks familiar. Like I know him from somewhere. And I walked in the other week and I said, I was probably just a good looking bloke I've seen strutting along the beach or seen at a cafe,
I
living
wish.
local or whatever it was.
Who
But
is this pest?
having a chat to you afterwards and finding out about what you do, I thought, okay, it's about 15 seconds after talking to you. I thought, he's surely going to get an invite onto the podcast because it's such an interesting story. It's a wild story, man. I was so fascinated by so many elements of how things have sort of been put together to get to a point of where they are for you now with the bucket list. But we were laughing the other day because you were telling me about your origin or like your involvement in the world of gyms before you were doing anything like what you were doing now, and how much Hormozi's taken over the gym world and just made that like the investor's dream at the moment. It seems that every man aged between 25 and 30 now owns a gym or is at least aspiring to.
Yeah.
How's
Yeah.
I thought as a way of introduction, man, you'd be better off doing it than I would. Like, give us a little bit of an overview of sort of that part of your life and the transition into what you're doing now, because it's such a unique field that you found yourself in.
Yeah, I guess the backstory, I'm here in Ocean Grove, and you're not too far away, and we probably could do this live, but we're not. It's all good. I'm in born and bred in Ocean Grove, so grew up here as a competitive surfer, surf lifesaver, swimmer. Joined the surf lifesaving club. Pretty much a jock through my whole life. I think that's what they call them in America. So I did that led me to do a phys ed degree at Victoria University. Third year uni, this bloke came in. He was doing this thing in the early 90s called personal fitness training. And he was Daryl Summers' personal trainer off Hey Hey It's Saturday. And I thought, oh, that's rock star. He told me how much he got paid, and he was training a lot of celebrities and this sort of thing up in Toorak. And me, a country boy, up in the big smoke, he was doing this thing called personal training, and this pre-internet. And he said, I just followed him around. I had all these questions. I thought, this is interesting. This is the first time I really got any idea about what I was going to do, because I thought I was going to be a kid's, high school phys ed teacher or something like that. So he said, subscribe to this magazine, go to this conference, get this book. And I just did everything he said. I was I helped him out and did a bit of a work experience with him. And I got my first personal training client at Footscray Swim Centre back in the day. And I got paid a whole $25 an hour. And things are a little bit different these days. And yeah, man, I started with one client, and just, I was making more money out of personal training than anyone I knew in my industry by the end of university. Really didn't care about uni at the end. And that helped me. My first client, Heather, she referred everyone in the English-speaking language and then some to my business. My record was 63 one-hour mobile personal training sessions in a week around Melbourne. So I did that literally for about 3 years, then hired my first person. I was running boot camps before there was such a thing, and doing all these things around the botanical gardens and all over Melbourne, really. And I had a deal with 4 gyms around Melbourne where I could take a member or non-member and just rock up, pay them $5, $10 or whatever per session, and just train them. Even before fitness first came on the scene, and but I was flat out. I was doing everything with them. I was running up and down the stairs. I was doing the boxing. I was doing the laps of the tan, the whole bit with them, and I was fit as, and I was getting paid a lot of cash too. And I say to my younger personal training mentees, don't do what I did, put it into property, which I should have. But no, it's this thing called Melbourne nightlife that kind of took over. I invested a lot of money into that, and so that didn't last too long. But I started with Heather. She, I grew formed one of the first personal training studios there in Richmond, just down near where Channel 9 used to be on Swan Street in Richmond. Had 13 personal trainers working for me there. And we were running all sorts of corporate programs and triathlon club and boot camps and all, even TAC rehab stuff. And yeah, one of my employees said, "Oh, Trav, I want to build a studio as well." And I said, "All right, cool." And someone around that time said, "Oh, you can't," because I read one of my first books I ever read was called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It was all about systemization, McDonaldization, if you can call it that, of business. Setting up systems that survive without you, and it ruined me for life. And I thought about franchising personal training. And I mentioned it to a mate, and he said, "Oh, you can't franchise personal training because it's personal." And that was all I needed. So about a year later, I franchised personal training studios, and we built a chain of personal training studios around Australia, and in 3 states anyway. And over 300 personal trainers and 2 million personal training appointments. Tens of thousands of clients were positively affected. And yeah, that was my first business. So I had 3 company-owned studios, and the model was about a 200 square metre studio. So I owned one in Albert Park, Elwood, and also Yarraville. And about 6 to 8 trainers within each one. So I had 3, and the rest were franchised. And so yeah, man, that was my whole. When Australian Institute of Fitness started in Victoria, I was their senior presenter in the personal training courses. I was on the board of Fitness Australia. Helped write the code of ethics for personal trainers in Australia and in particular Victoria. So that was sort of early pioneering days, pre-internet, pre-Facebook and Instagram and all the rest of it. So the transition came, though, was when I let some, they were employee. One was an employee, and he thought, "Oh, I can do what Trav does," and it was quite cancerous. He hooked up with a lawyer, and they together, really made negative waves through my business. And it became a bit of a situation where the tail was wagging the dog. There's a few legal blues. They really wanted to just, kind of do it for themselves and get out of their agreement and mimic what I've done. So it just did my head in. A few other things, probably the partying didn't help either. I slipped into about a depression. I love personal training. I love helping people, but the business model just wasn't for me anymore. And but instead of going on heavy antidepressants, man, which is what the doctor prescribed me, I went, no, I don't want to sleepwalk through my life. I'm going to deal with what I'm dealing with. So I went to every course that you could, but I had to force myself out of get to the stage where you don't want to pick up the phone or don't want to answer an email, and, you're behind on, money's tight and relationships are strained. And I was married as well, so there was all kinds of strains and bits and pieces going on. And yeah, man, I went to these seminars. I walked on fire with Big Tony Robbins, did ayahuasca, went to Burning Man, the whole bit, and trying to find myself. Some would argue still haven't found yourself. But I did work out. I got to the cause rather than dealt with the effects. And was in one of these seminars, about 2 years later, and a friend of mine said, "Trav, you're in these seminars all the time. Every weekend you're in something new. Why don't you teach this stuff?" And it was a real light bulb moment. I went, and it helped me compartmentalize what I was going through. I'm here to teach this stuff, to pay this stuff forward, to add my own flavor. So about a month later, I put on a talk. I was so scared. And I packaged in all, because I've never had a job. I had a beach lifeguarding job. I worked, that was about it. And kids swimming teaching a little bit during uni for basically beer money. And so I've always been an entrepreneur, learned all this psychology stuff. and I put on a talk. It was at the Western Bulldogs rooms over there in Footscray, where I lived in Seddon. And I started sharing all my stuff. I had 40 people in the room and started sharing the fact that I had a list to do before you die, actually written down since I was 18. No one knew this about me. I said, who else has got one of these lists to do before you die? And it was donuts, no one. And it just bewildered, because I'd had one of these lists and it had always been my North Star, my compass, my reason for getting out of bed in the morning, you know, especially during tough times. I thought everyone had one of these kind of lists actually written down. I said to the group, you know, why do you get out of bed in the morning? And most of the people, you know, why do you want to earn more money? Why do you want to earn more time? And the common response that I still get today is pay off the house, put the kids through school, do a bit of travel when I'm older. Yeah, and possibly sicker. But is that it? So it inspired the group, told them some stories. And Joe, one of the participants, said, how's all this list to do before you die stuff? It's like a bucket list. This is about 13 years ago. You're like the bucket list guy. I went, ping, another light bulb moment. Went home that night and registered the bucketlistguy.com. And I've been doing that ever since.
Man.
So I've been basically reverse engineering that, and came out of the blocks as a speaker, you know, really, you know, coaching one to many via the stage, and defranchised the whole business, sold off my personal training studios. That took, you know, 2-3 years in itself. But the personal training was the first 20 years of my life. I say the first 20 years was PT and the next 20 PD, as in personal development. And around that time, the whole, as you might remember too, Tyson, you know, the whole world was kind of going online. Tim Ferriss had just come out with his 4-Hour Workweek book, which completely ruined my life. Here I was with these gyms and bricks and mortar businesses and fucking corporate, you know, commercial leases just weighing me down, and here's Tim Ferriss running everything from fucking a hammock in Thailand. And I'm like, I like that business model better than this. So screw this guy. So I just, you know, I've had lunch with Tim Ferriss since, and when he came to Australia, and he was one of the people I wanted to meet and thank on my bucket list as well. And so I've been online ever since, before it was COVID cool.
What I knew there was a reason I got you to give the introduction. It's so wild to hear just about how events, like hindsight's a funny thing, isn't it? Looking how one particular thing leads into something like you're in now. Ironically, like the PT world.
This is therapy, by the way. This is therapy, you know.
Wait, right back at you, man. Mine's about to start. Some of my good mates, Shane, one of my very good mates, is a PT now, owns a studio called Fit My Soul. And one thing that he often tells me is that PT, a lot of people assume that it's got to do just with the physical developments that people make. He goes, mate, 90% of my job is dealing with the mental bullshit that people bring to the door that's either stopping them from getting into some form of habit building when it comes to the physical world, some kind of depression, or just a block that's stopping them from actually making progress in like what is arguably the most important element of your life, at least the foundation, like your physical health, mental health, and fitness. So it's interesting to see that, like, the transition on paper looks as though you've changed lifestyle drastically. Like, in terms of working hours, I assume it has. But in terms of what you're actually doing, it's not too far separated.
No, I was always in personal training too. I was always fascinated with psychology, you know, like, and motivation. And growing up as a competitive swimmer and surf lifesaver, always fascinated with psychology. I had some great coaches and went to national level on different things. And I was always fascinated with the psychology side of things. And you know, I had many a personal training session where I'd lay out, you know, for instance, my first client, Heather, for instance, literally when I was 21, she was a 50-year-old lady, above 50-year-old lady. She had a neck injury, a back injury, knees had arthritis in them to the point where they were getting drained every quarter. They were really bad. And I'd just done rehab at uni, so I thought, all right, guinea pig, here we go. So she trained with me 3 times a week at $25 an hour. And some days mate, some days her self-esteem was absolutely in the toilet, when we first started. Some days she'd come in with bruises on her. And I'm 21, didn't grow up in any kind of abusive household or anything like that. I'm adopted, but my parents were great. I could see that she'd had a rough night. I'd have this whole CrossFit circuit kind of all laid out, and I've been, well, Heather, today, what we're going to do, we're going to have a coffee. We're going to have a chat. And they were the best personal training sessions that she's ever paid for. So right then I knew that this is not about the physical, it's about the psychological, and that I love life coaching. There's coaching and there's life coaching, I guess, even though, people go, oh my God, you're a life coach, it gets met with skepticism, but essentially that's what we're all kind of doing. And all personal trainers, there's a lot of personal trainer who like I did, definitely transition to helping people with the broader psychology, the broader aspects of life. And, especially at the end of the personal training. So I had a lot of personal trainers, working with or under my brand, and they helped all the clients. And I was already kind of doing a lot of kind of life coaching, if you will, sort of at the end of it. I had a lot of my clients coming to me about relationship, wealth, their businesses, and everything else. I was with their family, being parents, so when you're a coach, people listening, watching this will know if they're a coach inherently. If they're a coach, if people are coming to you going, "Can I just catch up with you and grab a coffee?" And you're that type of person that people, confess to, reside, like having a chat to, bounce things off. Then you're probably a coach, and you can't help it. It's just you, and you probably get that too, Tyson. You just, that's your natural inclination. So, to take that from amateur to pro and start charging for your time is a whole other ball game, which is what I love helping other, coaches do. But yeah, man, I always was a coach. I've always been a coach, and it's only now that I'm really recognizing all of those runs on the board in the previous life as a personal trainer that led me to what I'm doing now.
Yeah. What I like about the umbrella term of the bucket list as well is whenever someone hears bucket list and they actually boil it down a little bit, naturally, one of the first things you're going to think about is, okay, what am I actually really keen to do, as opposed to what my daily structure is taken up by. And I would guess that at least 90% of the people just going about their daily lives, for one reason or the other, has so many elements of their life that they feel stuck in. And especially as you get older. I've got 2 boys now, and the whole day revolves around play. It's not around structure. It's not. They couldn't give a shit what time lunch is, what time sleep is. All they want to do is go, all right, how can we play? And it's an absolute pain in the ass sometimes. It does my head in, but I love it because it makes me realize how stagnant so many areas of my life have become. Even just the wonder that they take with the way they look at a rock or a duck or a it could be anything. They go, Dad, what is this? And I go, well, honestly, like I got to stop and think because I haven't thought about it for 25 years. But what I like about the idea of a bucket list is it comes back to this idea of play in a big sense. So that's the way I see it. It goes, okay, so this is what you're doing with your time, but eventually you're going to die. With that limited time that you've actually got, what would you really like to do? And how can you structure your life in a way that you can make that possible?
Yeah, well, look, I say a bucket list is a tangible life plan where our career plan or our business plan should fit into our life plan and not be the other way around. It really brings home that work to live principle. And it helps people reprioritize, because most people, bucket list, like the movie, has got a negative connotation because it's about 2 blokes that get given a cancer diagnosis and then they write a bucket list. It's like, sorry, fellas, too late. So it's a shit movie. I'll base my whole career on it. So I want to wake people up before they get given a use-by date. Because there's so many people waiting till someday, and that ain't a day of the week, the perfect time, and there is no perfect time, or they're waiting till retirement, and we're sold retirement, exiting the business, getting the investments up to a point where you don't have to work anymore. We're sold this we're in a delayed gratification society. I'll be happy when syndrome. But meanwhile, people are sacrificing their happiness now to enjoy later. No wonder depression, anxiety, suicides, youth suicides, the overprescription of antidepressants. And we've even got this thing now called the loneliness epidemic. It's a real thing. And then we go through the pandemic in there, and we've got an absolute mental health perfect storm. 70% of people are what they call disengaged in Australia, in Australian workforces. It's 90% over in America. So people are just existing, not living. They're living by this weird default, I'll be happy when syndrome, waiting to retirement. And, but what's wrong with being happy now? Because something's broken, because these stats aren't going away. The loneliness epidemic is creeping up. Depression is on the rise. There's more and more suicides happening. It's like something's broken. So I'm doing my best with my bucket list narrative, and I guess this filter and the tools and stuff like that, as much as I possibly can, get this message out as much as I possibly can, because everything that I talk about is what they call positive psychology, which is really what helped me, is the psychology of happiness, right? And versus regressive psychology or normal psychology, where a psychologist, you go and have therapy or get drugs to be normal again. But Tyson, in your community, who the fuck wants to be normal, right? No one wants to be normal. No. We want to perform. So what positive psych is all about is helping people identify what brings them meaning, purpose, fulfillment, more gratitude, and basically bleeding more of that into their life and into their businesses or into their careers. So they'll be happier. Simple, right? We don't have to sacrifice our happiness to enjoy later. I'm into delayed gratification, don't get me wrong. But I'm also into instant gratification, not in a hedonistic kind of way, but into helping people be happier now, because people largely aren't happy now. So this bucket list, all I've done is taking these positive psychology principles, helping people find more meaning, purpose, fulfillment, and more gratitude in their life, put this brand of bucket list over the top of it to make it more palatable, more user-friendly, more fun. And it seems to have resonated. I'm a serial entrepreneur and still doing the same thing after 12 years is a fucking miracle in itself, because I've got the squirrel syndrome going on.
For sure. You need my wife to pop over once a day and just go, mate, keep your focus. That's what I use it for. I reckon that's the most common part of advice in our house, because I think we share that same spirit of, hey, what's the next idea? Mate, one thing I'm interested to pick your brain about that you mentioned a couple of times now is when you were going through your phase of depression or your phase of feeling really low and you were recommended antidepressants. A lot of the time, this is one thing that frustrates me a lot about so many GPs, so many psychologists. I've had the same experience a number of times in my life where, for whatever reason, I've been in a flat patch, call it depression, that's lasted longer than I would have liked it to. And just to go get a little bit of extra assistance or have someone outside of the family that I could talk to and get some strategies, I would go and do it. So I spoke to a guy 15 years ago, unbelievable, taught me about cognitive behavior therapy. And for me, it was an immediate change. And then for whatever reason, about 4 or 5 years ago, I went through another phase. Well, I can tell you the reason. I lost a couple of close friends. And at the time, I think I was underestimating the impact that it had on my emotional health. And so I went through a phase of grief or depression, or maybe a combination of the two that seemed to feed on each other. And I knew at the time that what I was looking for was I didn't need antidepressants. It wasn't anything too out of whack. It was a phase that I had to navigate, and it was uncomfortable, but I just wanted some support and guidance through it.
Yeah.
And I went back and saw this guy, and he goes, well, mate, look, based on the fact that 15 years ago you had some issues as well, it looks as though it could just be like a bit of a genetic thing. We need to get you on some antidepressants. And I got angry at him in the office. I was like, mate, it's unbelievable that can be your go-to. I said, because for the last 15 years, I've been the happiest bloke that anyone knows. I've loved my life. There's been no huge stress emotionally. It seems to be a phase. And I had that same recognition, probably because I'd sort of taken that route a couple of times and had been that zombie in the past, by taking I think it was an SSRI when I was about 18 or 17. And looking back now, I just wasn't equipped with helpful strategies. And now whenever I face those kind of strategies, it might be difficult, but CBT for me, like I've got a little formula written up, like a gym program, to make sure that I'm on top of on a regular basis, which seems to be the key for me. Like I'm not assuming that everyone's going to have the same approach, but I was just curious to find how you were aware of the fact that that was an overused tool to try and help get people through that phase.
Oh, look, I just knew too many clients on it.
Mm.
And remember, this is back in the personal training days, so I'd trained so many clients with depression. And I just knew that they weren't themselves, and I knew the different person when they came off those drugs. So I didn't have a real good opinion of them going in.
Mm.
And so, and I knew the highs and lows, and also, the ramifications about, how it affects a lot of different areas. And it's great. Don't get me wrong. Great for a lot of people, just not for me. And when I look back on what I went through, it was mild compared to what I've heard since. It really was. So here I am whinging about my depression, but really it was mild compared to, did I want to kill myself? No. Did I think about it? Yeah, once. But, mate, I went to Beyond Blue. I talked to some people there, and they get you to tick I remember going there, and they give you this flyer. I picked it up from someone, and you go through this checklist, and I'm like, check, check, check. Basically, if you check them all, you've got clinical depression. And the last thing on that checklist, whether they've still got it today or not, I don't know, was have you smiled in the last week, or something like that. And I'm like, fuck, I smiled yesterday. Jesus. Because I want to win. I want to get everything right. And I'm like, fuck, damn it. I smiled yesterday. I shouldn't have had that laugh. Damn it. So I was going to lie. But, I don't tell that story much, but that's the honest truth. So I wasn't that bad, but I've done so many. I talk about it from stage. And why I do speaking is so it can affect more lives in a smaller amount of time. It's coaching one to many, right? And so I talk about depression very, very openly, and I know it can trigger. I know it can bring to light some of the stuff that people are going through. And I talk about cancer as well. So it can ruffle some feathers. But I've had some full-on situations with some alpha males in the room. And I deal regularly with vets who have come back, over in America. I'm part of the Heal the Heroes program. So we're dealing with serious PTSD. So, and my stuff has helped them. I'm like, I didn't know it could, but it is. So I help the Heal the Heroes program over in the States. So, there's guys, when I'm doing those presentations, there's guys with one arms and one legs and, the whole bit. And it resonates. So it's found its audience. So it's definitely a tool that's helped me. It's helped other people. I've had some alpha males just come up to me right at the end, and have gone. There's one instance there when the head of this big organisation. He was the boss that basically got me in, and at the end of it, I can see where it's sinking in. He cornered me at the end of it and just had one of my books in his hand, and he's going, oh, look, Trev, can you sign this, but also pretend to sign it for a lot longer, because and he cornered me in the room. So I was facing the room, and he just broke down in tears. He goes, I can't cry in front of them. All right, I just stay here for a minute. Just pretend we're talking, and just tell me if anyone's coming up behind me, because he couldn't hold it in. I said, I got you, bro. No worries. Just and just started talking. he wiped away his tears and said, "Thanks, man." We hugged it out. And, I'd like to say that that's the only instance of that I've had, but I've had many. I've had people on suicide watch. I've had, all sorts of people. People. I had a guy at a business breakfast for CFOs at the Park Hyatt in Melbourne. And a guy halfway through, he literally grabbed the microphone. They had a roving microphone, and he just stood up. Everyone was in suits except for me. There's 250 people in the room. He said, "This is shit, and you are full of shit." "Oh, thank you, sir," in front of everyone. I'm like, "Oh, we've got a heckler." So yeah, you develop a thick skin when you're a speaker, and I've gone over to him. I remember a teacher telling me once, if you get a heckler, if you get someone that's disruptive, don't go face to face with them. Go side by side. I could see the little, tear in his eye, little wet eye, and I put one hand on his shoulder and I said, "You know what? I think you're right." And I just, who would agree? Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's easy. And I said, obviously, I've said something today that has caused you to say that. If it's okay with you, can I play on, for the rest of the room, and can we have a chat afterwards? And yeah, I had a chat with him afterwards, and his wife was going through chemo. He'd had no sleep the night before, and we hugged it out, and he said sorry the whole bit, and he told a bunch of other people. It was all cool. But yeah, man, look, it's the reason I'm still, on this topic, driving this car down this lane, is because it resonates with a lot of people, and like it did for me in the early days.
Yeah, man. That's heckling at a new level as well. It's such a skill, isn't it?
Like, I've had a lot of hecklers. I've had a few hecklers, yeah. I've had a few hecklers over the time.
I'll take back what I said then, because I was laughing with you the other day, because you said that you did stand-up comedy. I don't know if it was earlier this year, last year.
That was last year.
Yeah, and one of the things that stood out to me was I just assumed that the corporate world would sit there and be polite. And I come from a church background, and I was a pastor speaking to a congregation. And, mate, if there's one place you're not supposed to heckle, it's at church. And so people can sit there thinking this is a shit message, but they're not going to yell anything at you. Whereas at comedy, I assumed at a corporate
it's a license. License to have a crack at you. Yeah.
That's why people are out there.
Yeah.
So you've probably come a little bit more prepared. You tell us a little more about that experience. You're saying you're at School of Hard Knocks here in Melbourne. That was one of. I mean, we could do a 2-day podcast on your bucket list.
Hats off to you. Anyone that can do stand up comedy, I think that's possibly the hardest thing you can do in this life. People pay money to laugh at your jokes. It's just next level. Keynote speaking is a hell of a lot easier. Except
pays
for
a hell of a lot more.
Business. Yeah. But so I had, because my bucket list is, because I go through this my bucket list blueprint. You might be able to see it on the back here. So I did a TED talk. So yeah, in there it's an acronym, my bucket list, and it's an acronym for help people go north, south, east, west in their own head, and help them extract and articulate a personally meaningful and holistic bucket list. So C on that acronym is conquer a fear. So one of the things that I had on my bucket list was do a stand-up comedy gig. I put it off. I had it on there for 8 years on my official bucket list before I did anything about it. So it wasn't until after the pandemic I went, you know what? I've got to get out of this funk. I'm going to blow the doors off. And so my mate, who we both know, Maury, he runs the School of Hard Knocks here in Melbourne, and a fellow speaker had just done his course, and he's like, "Oh, why aren't you doing it, Mr. Bucket List Guy?" I'm like, "No, I'm getting around to it, mate. Take it easy." And so, I had nowhere to hide, and I just committed. And Maury, I had Maury on my podcast, and I was talking about it, why people do it, because so it's a lot of bucket list items for a lot of people. It's overcoming fear, And so I signed up, and School of Hard Knock Knocks works like this. You and maybe we have 11 other students instructed by a stand-up comedian, professional stand-up comedian or two. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, you meet for 3 hours. You're writing jokes. You're performing the jokes in front of each other, not getting any laughs. So I had all these jokes prepared over all these years, and I got up on night one going, crush this, and plus I'm a speaker. And I get up and tell my jokes. No one fucking laughed. And I just realised that I'm just a sick fuck. And I don't know if I can swear on this, but I have. And I went, oh my God, I'm screwed. And so I started telling some, like, it is just running on the spot. And, I started telling some stories from Perth. And our coach there was just like, mate, finish the stories, get to the funny. I'm like, this is all I got. And then I'm screwed. So, apparently we learned of all the different comedians and different styles and, all the, and the fact that you've, stand-up comedy, you've got to make someone laugh every 15 seconds. So 4 times a minute. Holy shit. You've got to keep people engaged big time. So we had to prepare a 5-minute spot during this, the comedy school there, because on the Thursday night we all flogged tickets to our family, friends, and all 12 of us had to fill the room. So we had 120 people at the Rubber Chicken down there in South Melbourne. It was a full house, and we all did our 5-minute bit, and then the headliners did their bit at the end, and that's all been recorded. It's on my YouTube channel. I was fucking shitting myself. I'm so glad. My family came along. Half of the jokes were about them. Yeah, I did it.
What a wild!
But it was really good. Like it's changed my storytelling. It's changed my getting to the point. I use some of it in my keynotes now. So it's all, a really good experience. And the running joke is, Netflix still hasn't called Tyson, so I don't know. They must have lost my number or something like that. Where's my 4-part series? I don't. Why haven't they?
Yeah, it's a wild experience. My entry into the field of stand-up comedy about 5 years ago was the same. Like, I had always thought it was just something I would never do. And then based on the fact
Why'd you do it?
I listened to Joe Rogan speak a lot. Yeah, I listened to Rogan's podcast a lot. And he used to speak a lot about his background in martial arts. And so I was terrified of the idea of getting up there and just not being as funny as I thought I was. I'd never thought about it like a skill that you can actually develop. I just thought you had it or you didn't. And so I would hear about him speak on his background in martial arts and his discipline and his approach and his consistency. And I thought, it sounds a lot like distance running. Like I've got these factors that you're speaking about in martial arts for my running, but I've never really considered about applying any of this to any other field, really, like with the exception of a few, especially stand-up comedy. And so I just started writing down a couple of things that I thought were funny. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I just rocked up in an open mic comedy room one night. And it's so true, man. Like one of the weirdest things about it, I don't know how this is in the corporate scene, but one of the weirdest things is you can tell the same joke to 2 different crowds, and one of them pisses themselves laughing, and the other one gives you like you bomb. And so it's a constantly moving target of what's funny. And there's so many factors come into it, like your energy, your presentation, your confidence, the vibe you're giving up, the vibe of the room, obviously the quality of the joke. There's just so many things. So when you come home and you try and analyze, okay, hey, how did I go? It's a really difficult thing because you're trying to analyze 25 different things.
Yeah, I've got a great story around that. And like I've said, I've given talks all around the world, keynotes all around the world, some, big and small groups. And I was invited to speak down in Mexico. And there was, again, 350, 400 people in the room. And it was being interpreted. It was like I had interpreters at the back. Everyone had a headset on. So I've done that in Cambodia. I've done that in Vietnam, and also down in Mexico, Costa Rica, and a few other places. But in Mexico, this one where we had 2 interpreters at the back of the room, right? Everyone listening in headsets. So I'm pretty Aussie. I don't know if you picked that up. and I had a brief with the interpreters, and they spoke really good English. So basically, I'm saying my thing, and I've got my keynote pretty dialed in, and I know when the jokes are going to be. I know when the big aha moments are. Write this down, and examples set exactly. And so I sort of briefed them all on, briefed the interpreters, the two people in the box at the back of the room, that this is the state of play. And they went, yeah, no worries. And I did my thing, and there was just like some awkwardness because you just got to slow yourself down and like say a bit, and then 5 seconds later, you're still in this pose going. And then they go, ha, 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 ha. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Fuck, next thing. And then, so I did this one where I always get a laugh, no matter where I go around the world, and there was this massive delay. And I went to the interpreters afterwards, and I said, how about that, that thing when I said that? And they go, oh, we knew it was a joke. We couldn't really interpret it. So we just told everyone on their heads, in their headsets, Trav just made a joke, please laugh. And then they laughed. And the fucking charity laugh. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, that makes me feel bad.
That's
it
does so brutal.
Did not train. That was brutal.
Oh man, well, that's so funny.
A for effort, doesn't make me feel any better.
Mate, we've only got a few minutes left. Before you go, you've just kickstarted your new bodybuilding process. You were going home to take some photos of your.
Yeah, see, I told you that in confidence. But
was it? So that's not public knowledge just yet.
No, not yet. No. I
was just joking anyway. I was just a funny joke.
Yeah. No, I've just turned. No, I don't get it. So again, I've had this on my bucket list for a while, and I've just turned 50, and I don't know, I kind of did it when I turned 40, but in this 50, I this fuck you 50 moment, and hey, some would call it a midlife crisis. I'm calling it midlife awakening. But no, because I've done, this whole bucket list thing is about my and everyone else's human experience. And I think if you can experience as much, you push the envelope in every aspect of life, I think that's what life's all about, right? Who the fuck wants to sleepwalk through their life and just not test themselves, not see where their potential lies? And I want everyone listening and watching this, Tyson, to get curiously excited about the person that exists on the other side of your bucket list. And that's the person that you don't know yet. Get curiously excited about the person, because people are dying at 40 and being buried at 80. So get curiously excited about what's on the other side. You got no idea of what your potential is. So for me, I've done the Ironman. I signed up to do the full-on Melbourne Ironman, full distance Ironman, 3.2K swim, 180K bike ride, and a marathon. Apparently all in one day. So I entered that having never done a triathlon before. I literally entered a year out, then bought a bike. Having done one marathon, grew up as a swimmer, so that was cool. And overtrained, completely destroyed myself, then got a coach. Wow. Who would have thought that a coach would have... And he just said, what the fuck have you been doing? You've overtrained, you've destroyed yourself and cut my volume down by half. Who would have thought? So that was one extreme, the endurance extreme. And I've always gone, what's the opposite to that? That's something that I could at least train for. And I've always lifted weights, and it's just part of what I do because it's healthy. And doing this sort of stuff is great as a pastime, but I wanted to direct it. When I turned 50, I stopped drinking. Not that I was an alcoholic or anything like that. Just like, I don't really have a plate. My partner doesn't drink, and it's not a big thing. So, and just wanting to look after myself. The goal is to also become a centenarian as well. So I want to live beyond 100. I've got a tattoo on my chest from 90. It says, you might be able to see it. 19. There we go. I just did this the other day, last week. 1973.
Sweet.
To 2073 plus.
Yes, I thought that was an asterisk.
No, plus.
Yeah, awesome.
Hashtag.
That's awesome.
So if I look at that psychologically, if I could look at that in the mirror every day, it reminds me to keep healthy, that sort of thing. So long story short, I've always wondered about, not bodybuilding, but physique comp. I'm not big enough to be a bodybuilder, but a physique comp, and just beyond, in the beyond 50 category. So I found myself last weekend going to a bodybuilding comp, or the one that I'd enter in a year's time, size up the competition, film their poses, super weird, very brown, a lot of oil, lot of G-strings, gold G-strings on men, which I was very confronted by, but each to their own. So next minute I've gone, fuck it, I'm going to do it, give it a crack, give me something to train for, direct all this healthiness and 1 year thing too, and off we go. So I've got a prep coach and a posing coach now. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I'm going to put it on the YouTube channel and cross it off my bucket list, hopefully in a year's time.
I'll make sure I'll link that in your book and all your socials and stuff in the description to this episode. So anyone interested, make sure you check it out.
You want like the pictures of me in the leopard G?
100%, honestly, and a before and after would be fantastic if you don't mind.
We don't need this. I sent my befores, which is like me now, to this coach, and I grew up in Speedos, and I looked $1,000,000 back in the day. I look like I've eaten 3 of me. Right now, I've eaten a fucking sheep. So it's not pretty.
Watch this space, man. 12 months time, I bet it is. But bro, mate, thanks so much for making the time. I appreciate catching up with you on here, and I'll see you at Rocket Man the next few days.
Yeah, I'm going there. I'm going to talk to my podcast guy, and I'll probably be there very, very soon.
All good, brother. Take care, man. We'll see you later.
See ya.
Dude, you're a legend, man. If you got to run, you get out of here. But that was fun.